Talk about Data Risk Assessments 101, how to discover, classify, and measure risk around sensitive data. And my question for you is, what is data risk assessment, DRA, and why is this so important?
It's kind of what it sounds like. A data risk assessment is understanding, it's or a systematic approach to understanding what data do you have, and then what's the inherent risk of that. So within that, there's a whole lot of details, but it's identifying data first, understanding where your data is, could be in databases, could be structured or unstructured data. So structured being, SQL databases or document stores, Elastic databases, things like that, or unstructured, which could be file shares, SharePoints, different file repositories sitting around in spreadsheets. So all that kind of unstructured data, but it's the process of understanding where is sensitive data, how are you managing it, how far has it gone, because it tends to just float all over the place. We'll talk about that. And then classifying it and then coming up with a strategy to manage it. And that's sort of, in the very short version, that's a data risk assessment is under just the goal of understanding where's the data, what's the risk of it, how are you going to manage it?
Tell me more about the discovery phase of DRA and how that works.
Yeah, so the discovery phase is pretty interesting. Basically, what we use is there's different tools that are going to do what a human would do, but they just obviously do it radically faster. We're going to connect to data stores like databases, SQL databases, things like that, and go through and look for things that look like sensitive data. Now, some things are going to be super simple. If you've got a column called credit card and there's a number that looks like a credit card, well, that's pretty simple. It's also going to look for things that are less obvious. So if it sees something that looks like a social security number, but it has a table name or a column name like ID, then it's going to look elsewhere to see in context of, does that data actually look like a social security number? So has it got humans' names near it and then in the same table? Or is it a part number, for example, and there's non-human information? So it's that contextual logic that the solutions would have to identify where critical or sensitive data may be. And then in unstructured data like documents, spreadsheets, it's kind of going to do the same thing. It's going to read through those document stores, looking for things that appear to be sensitive data, and then looking in context around that to see, is this probably a social? Is this probably a credit card? Or is it just a random number that happens to look kind of like a social security number? So it's really doing that contextual searching for sensitive data and then identifying it. And it's, again, what a human would do, just radically faster at doing it.
So I'm an IT professional. I'm sitting here listening to it and I'm going, wow, this is a lot of stuff, a lot of data. Tell me how to put together a plan, or a strategy might be a better word, to mitigate data risk and prevent it moving forward.
Yeah, so step one is identify where it is. And just understanding where the data exists is always going to be step one. If you don't know you have a problem, or you don't understand the scope of a problem, it's almost impossible to manage it. The second step is then going to be to figure out, why does that data exist in those places? So if you have, for example, a credit card processing system, we all know you should probably be tokenizing that. So some of those solutions may be complicated. It's getting that data out of there. Other solutions may be, especially when we get into unstructured data stores, asking the question, is it even appropriate for the data to exist in that location? And frequently the answer is no. It's also coming up with a strategy for how long should that data be stored. So if we all know there's policies coming around that allow users to say, forget me. Well, that's a holistic statement. So if you don't know where the data is and someone asks you to forget them, remove my confidential information. If they don't understand what the data is, then it's a fairly broad problem. So then we get into things like data retention. How long should we keep the data? Having a strategy for that. Also, another part that comes huge is test data management. So if we have applications, we need to test those applications. So coming up with good strategies to take production data, convert it or cleanse it in a way that makes it still highly usable for test, but no longer truly confidential data. So it changes names, changes socials, changes all that confidential information around to where it's, again, useful, but not truly risky information anymore. And really all of those things go into putting together a strategy to mitigate data risk problems.
Final thoughts on Data Risk Assessments 101?
I think this is one of those topics where people can save themselves a lot of pain A lot of times you can take a system, and matter of fact, if you read the payment card industry PCI documentation, it's overtly suggests this. If you can understand where your sensitive data is and manage it well and minimize it, because a lot of times we just don't need it everywhere where it's at, you can actually save yourself a lot of money downstream. So for example, if you are storing credit cards and you don't need to, and you can remove it, well, then you no longer have PCI audits for systems. You no longer have the data risk associated with it. So if you can start, it's one of those things that's not like the coolest, sexiest thing to do. But if you can start by understanding your data and minimizing the amount that you have to deal with and having a strategy, you can save yourself a tremendous amount of money down the road and not having to worry as much about it in your applications or in data stores and audits. So, it's not the fun, it's not the kind of the cool thing to do every day. But the savings are tremendous. So being good at it really is an investment that can save a lot of money down the road.
Words of wisdom from the founder. Tell us something we can really take away from this and make us understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think as application security experts and practitioners, we have to remember that we are part of a software development lifecycle for the businesses we serve. We're an integral part of something that creates business value, that can speed up our companies, can slow them down, that can reduce the risk or increase it. We need to act like it. So we need to be team members with our software development partners, the people that are building applications and companies, and really understand the business they're in, the timing they have, and be a part of it. Don't be separate from it. So being integrated is critical. And everybody talks about shift left, which I agree with. But it's really more than that. It's also understanding, really become part of those teams. Understand, why are these applications being built for the business, and how can we help? How can we make it better? How can we help them go faster? How can we help them be more secure? So I think with that mindset, sort of that mindset of being a servant or providing service to those developers, I think it just puts us in a great mindset to serve our businesses we work for.
Dennis Hurst, we've talked about AppSec strategies, my friends, that drive measurable returns. Thanks so much for coming on Security Guy TV, my friend. And I hope to see you in person next year.
Yep, you too. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll all be back in Vegas again next year for Black Hat.